So everybody, thanks so much for listening. If you're a first timer, please like, share, and subscribe. We have a special guest. I'm going to have her on again. We talked before we started recording this interview for cheese. It feels like 30, 40 minutes, but it's about that time. But uh, anyways, we got a lot to bring to the table today, and we're going to go through that. And this is Emily Gold Mears, emilygoldmears.com. She has a book out. We're going to talk about that in just a moment. The book is Optimizing Your Health. We're going to talk about a lot of other questions too, as far as healthcare, because it is in shambles, and it's been in shambles for more than 3 years. I know people just say 2020, but it's been way more than that. But Emily Gold Mears, thanks so much for coming on. I really appreciate your time today.
Thank you for having me. It's nice to be here.
All right, so let's kick this around. You used to be an attorney. Now you're involved in health and wellness. What a big career change. How did this come about with that career change? Tell the viewers.
Well, I was always fascinated by science. I loved science. And years ago, I recognized that we have a real science literacy problem in this country. And I embarked on an effort to try and raise the science literacy. I'm involved with a number of nonprofit organizations, and I help them decide what presentations to put on, which symposia to choose, things like that to spread the word. This was long before the pandemic, which only confirmed our science literacy problem. And I have two sons, both who were diagnosed with ADHD, and I saw the way the schools and the doctors diagnosed it, and I was horrified. I mean, it was completely subjective. It wasn't objective at all. It wasn't scientific. Unlike diabetes, you have a blood test and you can determine these things in a scientific way. But with ADHD, it's the parent and the teacher fills out a questionnaire. So I was really horrified by that. And that helped me get into my research to see what I could do to combat that. And then my father got sick, and I was fortunate to have a wonderful dad. I mean, I just got lucky in that department, and he got vascular dementia. And I watched how the conventional healthcare system handled his disease, and I was horrified. They just gave him medication after medication, many of them acting at cross purposes, and they did nothing. So I began researching extensively. Was there anything that could be done to slow the progression of this terrible neurodegenerative disease, which, by the way, is striking more and more people? And despite that increase of numbers, there's been no meaningful progress made. Billions of dollars have been allocated to drug research. Brilliant scientists have devoted their lives to the research of this, and there has been no meaningful progress. So I started researching, and that's what I learned, that it was really quite grim and depressing and not hopeful. So I broadened my research to say, okay, what can we do to postpone the onset or prevent these things from ever happening? And I went beyond just neurodegenerative disease and included all chronic diseases, because I realized that's what's going to get all of us. Most of us are going to die from a chronic disease. And that includes cardiovascular, neurodegenerative, autoimmune, cancer. Those are the diseases that are going to get most of us. And, if you get into a car accident, you want to go to a conventional doctor. They're going to fix you up. But if you get one of these other ones, they're really not equipped to help that adequately. They're just going to apply you full of pharmaceuticals. Perhaps they'll do some testing, which might alert you of your condition early on so you can change your habits. But so little is talked about all the many things that we can do to prevent these diseases, or at the very least postpone the onset.
Well, and you brought this up, the lack of, well, we'll say it in a nice way. You know, a lot of people really don't care for the healthcare system anymore. They think it's a joke. I gave you my story. A lot of the viewers and listeners that have heard me talk about this, they've heard about my healthcare issues and how I don't trust doctors anymore. They just try to push pills. It's all a big pharmaceutical game, that these pills are pushed out to the doctors by the pharmaceutical companies. The doctors are owned by the pharmaceutical companies. They're owned by the insurance companies. They dictate how much time they give to you as far as an office visit. You're in there for like 3, 4 minutes, the guy or the woman is typing on the computer the whole time. They don't even look at you. How can they
That's right.
diagnose your problem? So can you go into that? I mean, it seems like you've had a lack of trust even in your own family with the healthcare system. So go into that. Why do you feel like Americans, but even the world is in general, doesn't trust the healthcare system? This didn't start just with COVID, as you said.
Well, they don't trust them for good reasons. I mean, for one thing, the CDC just came out with a statistic that for the first time in years, lifespan is declining. And if that's not an indication that the current process is not working, I don't know what is. And everyone has had that experience where they go to the doctor and the doctor doesn't look at you. His head is buried in his electronic health record and he doesn't. And that's something, believe it or not, that is problematic for more reasons than one would think. Not just because it makes, you can't form a connection, but it used to be that doctors would look at someone and they could visually spot certain physical things on their body, a swollen lymph node, something like that. They did a visual exam. They were taught to do that in medical school. Now they don't have time because they're being squeezed by the healthcare industry. The insurance companies only give them, I don't know, 8 to 12 minutes or something, and they're trying to pack in as many patients as possible. And I feel sorry for some of the doctors because I don't think that they signed up for this, but it's hard for them to operate outside of the very broken system. And a lot of them are leaving. And I'm not sure what it's going to take. Policy, it's going to take so many different factors to change it. But I mean, we don't really have a healthcare system. I mean, if you compare us to countries around the world, I don't think we can even call it a system because it's non-functioning.
Right. The whole country's in a dumpster fire. I mean, that's another story for another day. I do want to get back into the chronic disease because, you brought this up, and I think this is a big problem in our country. Chronic disease is going up. You just talked about the lifespan decline going back down. I was told growing up when we have all this technology coming out and all these cures were going to be coming and we were going to cure cancer. We were going to cure this disease, that disease. I think it's all a bunch of gobbledygook now. It's almost like, and you kind of alluded to this in your last answer, Emily, it's almost like they want us to keep getting these diseases because it's just like they're going to keep making that money. Push those pills, push those opioids, push those depression medications. It's all a big club, and you and we're not in it.
Well, make no mistake, there's a great deal of money in sickness. I mean, it sounds like a cynical thing to say, but it's an accurate thing to say. They are making money hand over foot. I mean, it's so costly to get sick, which is why when I tell people what I've learned, there may be some upfront costs, but ultimately they reduce the cost down the line. And there's an old expression, you pay now or you pay later. And if you pay later, you end up paying much, much more. So it's worth it to invest in your health. And the other thing, I wanted to speak to what you just said about artificial intelligence and these new things. This is a really interesting thing that I found from my research. And that is, it takes 17 years between something is discovered in the laboratory or some tech device and by the time it's widely adopted by the conventional healthcare system. 17 years. So there are things happen. It's not gobbledygook. There's so many fantastic innovations and discoveries and new protocols that have been figured out, but we're just not getting them to the people.
So is this like a regulation thing? Is that what you're speaking about?
Not really. I mean, some of it's regulation, but some of it is the rigidity of doctors. If they didn't learn it in medical school, they're not open-minded to it. And there's a lot of things that are being discovered that they're not being, they're not taught, or they weren't because they went to medical school 20 years ago. And so you have to find someone who's open-minded. Science is constantly evolving, as is medicine, and all these wonderful things. I really believe that with the advancement of artificial intelligence, we are going to find the cures to these diseases. That combined with genetics and all these other areas, genomics, it's going to, there's the potential for it to get better, truly.
Emily Gold Mears, emilygoldmears.com. Definitely check out the book. Again, for people just tuning in, Optimize Your Health. We're going to talk about that in just a second. Let's go into that right now. So, writing this book, I know this, you, again, for people just tuning in, you went from being an attorney to getting in this health science field. And you talked about that just a minute earlier. Talk about the book. What made you want to write it? How did it all get started?
Well, that's a good question. I really never aspired to writing a book, but I was a research analyst and I was doing this for some think tanks and other organizations. And I love research. That was one of the skills that I did develop as being a lawyer. I did not love being a lawyer, but I loved research, and particularly in the area of science and health. And I've learned so many things that I wanted to share. And I would go to conferences, probably 8 to 10 conferences a year, biohacking conferences, medical conferences, science conferences. And I amassed a gigantic quantity of information. And I'm a maniacal note taker. So I'm always taking notes. It helps me remember, it helps me process. And oftentimes I don't ever look at the notes again, but it's just sort of the way I do things. And then came the pandemic and lockdown. And I had been invited to speak in Rome, Italy,
Wow.
at a scientific conference that was going to be scientists from all over the world. I was the only non-credentialed scientist invited to speak at this conference about how a layperson can sift through all the misinformation and really get to the clinical studies and learn these things that are valuable and helpful and actionable. And then, of course, the conference was scheduled to take place in Rome, Italy, March of 2020, right at the beginning of the pandemic. So, of course,
Right.
that got postponed and then ultimately went to virtual. But I thought, what am I going to do? Everything was canceled for the year. And I thought, how am I going to, I don't know how long this lockdown is going to last. I need to keep active and agile. I'm not someone who likes to sit around very much.
Yes.
So I thought, I know, I'm just going to get all my notebooks, hundreds of notebooks. I'm going to go through them and I'm going to try and organize them. And maybe I'll make one comprehensive book for me, and then I talked to people about what I learned. And before I know it, it came pouring out of me. And I have 19 chapters. The 19th is a resource chapter, all the products and services that I vetted over the years that I think are really reliable and trustworthy. And then each other chapter, all of the 18, can stand on its own. Each one is an area that I think is really important for people to know about and to know how they can use these concepts to improve their health.
All right. So, Emily, I do want to get into some of these questions. Again, some of this stuff is in the book. Again, if people want to learn more about these topics, definitely read the book. There's a lot of great information in there. And I always try to bring the best people on here because we need to learn these topics. And especially in a time where who knows what the heck is next going to happen with our health in general, you need to learn how to get your health to the best way it should be. I want to talk about this before we get into these questions. There's a lot of people, and I see this a lot. I don't know if you see this in California, but I've seen this in Rhode Island. I've seen this in Florida, that the fast food restaurants are packed to the gills with people right now. It's like they're giving away food. I would see a lot of people going to get fast food before the pandemic, but throughout the pandemic and even going into now, there's still tons of people, lines, are going to eat this trash food. It's not even food, I would say. I say it's just garbage. It's just quick garbage. What would you tell people that are listening that maybe are addicted? And this isn't being mean, this is truthful. There's addictive components in this food. McDonald's, Burger King, all these companies meet with scientists to put these chemicals in the food to make them addictive. What would you tell people that are listening about these fast food restaurants to make them maybe not want to eat them so much?
Well, I go into that in the book. I talk about those the food chemists that are in the laboratory figuring out the combination of ingredients to get people addicted. I mean, it's really quite sinister. It's shocking. Make no mistake, the food industry does not care about our health. Now, that the fast food thing is a little complicated. I have great empathy for people who are in financial trouble. I mean, this country is, as you mentioned, it's not in great shape. There's a lot of problems, and there are
Yes.
people who are suffering financially. And maybe that's the reason they go there. But what they need to understand is maybe they're saving money initially by buying this very inexpensive food, but they're doing such harm to their health that they're going to pay later on, and they're going to pay so much more. That in Costa Rica, that is a country that subsists largely on rice and beans. And they're so much healthier. And rice and
Yeah.
beans in combination make a perfect protein, and they're not processed. I mean, I guess the rice is somewhat processed, but nothing to the extent of the fast food. And that's very inexpensive way to eat and far more healthy than going to the fast food restaurants. People don't know what they're doing, but they're harming themselves terribly.
Would you agree with this, Emily, though, that if you go and buy fast food, I don't eat that trash. I think it's garbage. But I know the prices, and they keep going up as the inflation and the economy gets worse. Regardless of that, it's almost like for one of their meals, it's like $8 or $9. You can go to a regular restaurant and get a meal for maybe $12 or $13. You might be saving like $2 or $3, but you get better quality food probably at the restaurant you're going to than the one of these fast food things. I was also told that if you actually go and buy food there, we try to always buy organic because has the less pesticides. It is better for your health. There are some foods and fruits that you can buy that are not organic if they have that hard skin, bananas, oranges, the list goes on and on, that you can kind of get away with that. But besides the point, would you tell these people, though, that are going and buying these fast food and eating all these um, processed foods, that it's actually cheaper to buy the vegetables and the fruits? And obviously, as you said, if you eat that the majority of your days, when you get old and gray, you are probably going to be in a heck of a lot better health than somebody that just consistently keeps going down this fast food, this canned, this frozen food aisle way than people eating the vegetables and fruits.
It's true. Although frozen vegetables and fruits are not that bad. If you buy
Right.
the right brand, they flash freeze them and some of them retain the nutrients. But it is the ultra processed foods that's destroying America. I mean, we are such a sick country, and a lot of it is the ultra processed foods. And what another thing that people should consider is, with a little bit of planning. None of us like to plan. You want to be on the spur of the moment, and you get hungry and you just you take care of it in the quickest way you can. But if you make the effort to do a little bit of planning up front, then you won't be caught in the position of being so hungry that you have to quickly feed your hunger. On Sunday night, you do a little meal planning and you kind of figure out what you're going to have, and you can go to the store and get a chicken breast if you eat chicken, or get some vegetables. There's so many things you can do. It will take a little bit of your time, but the return on that investment is going to be huge. It really is.
I want to talk about stuff that other people brought up. I was told, men wear cologne, women wear perfume. People don't know the toxicity, I should say, in those that we put on our bodies. Let's kick that around. Can you talk about, we could talk about, perfume and cologne, but also talk about the toxicity of cleaning products that we put all around the house, and other toxins rather that we use in our house that maybe we don't even know, because these names of the ingredients and these as far as chemicals, we're not taught about this in school. They're so hard to pronounce. We can't pronounce them. We don't know. And again, Americans don't do that due diligence to look up these chemicals and see what that chemical really means in general. So talk about the toxins that we deal with day to day in the household.
That's a biggie. I feel certain that toxic exposure is a component in every disease. And currently, the US permits more than 85,000 chemicals in our food, our water, commercial products that we put on our skin, we use to clean, store food in, wear, sleep on, grow crops with, and more. We're literally surrounded by toxins that have not been adequately tested for safety. And then there's a combination of the toxins together, which increase their danger. I mean, it is such a ubiquitous problem, and I know it's part of every disease, but there are things that we can do. You can filter your air. You can get an air filter for your home, and I suggest that people do so. You can get a water filter. That's imperative, because depending upon where you live, the water out of the tap is not safe to drink in. I mean, they've done tests, and they find that people dump their pharmaceuticals down the toilet and chemical runoff. I mean, there's so many bad things. And yes, they do put it through water treatment plants, but they're not sufficient to get all of these bad chemicals out of our water. So get a water filter at home. And there are many different types that you can get, ranging from very inexpensive on the countertop all the way to a more elaborate osmosis whole house system. And you can choose what your budget allows. But then when it comes to personal care products, lotion and toothpaste and hair shampoo and all of that stuff, luckily today there are so many non-toxic brands that are emerging. And I suggest that people only use those, because all that chemicals on your skin is your biggest organ. And you coat it with chemical laden products, and it permeates your skin, goes into your blood system, and adds to the chemical soup that we're exposed to. And I don't use perfume anymore. I mean, you can get non-toxic brands, but those are bad news. The aerosol, the sprays. And I don't suggest that we're ever going to be free completely of toxins, but there's so many things that we can do to at least reduce our exposure. Our cookware products, our cleaning products, all of those, you can make incremental changes, and every little improvement is going to help and make you feel better. Don't use candles that have fragrance in them. I think there are soy candles and some that don't have all the bad chemicals that make them smell good. And air fresheners, all those things are filled with bad chemicals, and they're making everybody sick. The problem is you don't know right away. We think that we're getting away with it, but all of a sudden, there's a concept that I talk about that I love called allostatic load. And what you can compare it to is like you have a trash can in your system. And this trash can, when you're young, you're very resilient, and you can do all sorts of bad things. You can be exposed to the toxins. You can wear cologne. You can eat the fast food. You can do the stuff. But because you're young and resilient, your trash can isn't very full. But as you get older and you continue these assaults and these very bad habits, your trash can starts to fill up. And one day it's too full and it begins to spill over. And that's when you become symptomatic. And then it's a lot harder to turn your ship around. So it's good to start early before your trash can is full.
Yeah, I'm not a big cologne person either. I agree with you 100%. And, through going through what I went through, and, just learning about nutrition, just learning about a lot of the stuff that you just spoke about, it's really kind of changed my life about health and wellness and how we need to take care of ourselves, especially while we're younger, because as you stated throughout the interview, when you get older, you'll be screwed if you don't. In plain English, I hate to talk like that, but that's the way the cookie crumbles. I do want to get into some other topics here. Again, for people just listening, emilygoldmears.com. Again, the book is Optimizing Your Health. Definitely check it out. All the bookstores. You can get it on our website. Let's talk about this. You brought this up, and we talked about this, about the LED lights. Everybody's changing to LED now. The TV, the lights, everything is with that. You say that it hurts your health. Can you explain that to the viewers that are listening right now?
Yes, I can. LED and fluorescent lights are more sustainable. And I live in California, and we are mandated. We have to buy LED lights.
Wow.
I know, because everyone is concerned about the environment. And I also am concerned about the environment. But what they don't tell you is that while you're protecting the environment, you are doing bad things to your biology. And the reason is this: blue light during the day is fine. It comes from the sun, it comes from other areas, and we're meant to be exposed to blue light during the day. But at night, when the sun goes down, the excessive quantity of blue light is really hurting us. It's going into our eyeball, hitting our pineal gland, and shutting off our endogenous production of melatonin and human growth hormone. Not to mention really hurting our eyes. And this blue light at night, it comes from the LED light bulbs. It comes from our screens on our computers, our televisions, our phones, all of our devices. And there are things that you can do to reduce the impact. You can download the red screens on all your devices. You could wear blue blocker glasses at night while you watch TV. And you could, and I suggest, if you live in a state that permits, I have to import my light bulbs in California. I suggest you get incandescent light bulbs, or at least in your bedroom where you'll be at night. So, if you, during the day, it's okay to have them, but the areas that you're in at night after sundown, switch those out to incandescent or even red lights, and it'll be much easier on your biology.
Wow, I didn't know that. Thank you for telling the viewers and the listeners, but also myself that, because I actually have that, and sometimes I leave well, we won't get into that because it's got to do with the stuff that we spoke about earlier. But I leave a little night light on for a little bit, and it is one of those kind of lights, and I didn't even know. Now I get the message, and I will not do that anymore for sure, 100%.
A nightlight is not a bad idea. You don't want to trip and fall on the way to the bathroom in the middle of the night. So it's not a bad idea. Get a red one. Get a red nightlight. You just need something to illuminate your pathway. That's all.
Good point. But yeah, a lot of people didn't know that. So, I appreciate you telling us that. Let's go into this. We spoke about this off air because we had talked, as I talked about earlier in this interview. We had spoke for a while before we went in to record this. And speaking off air, we talked about supplements. I personally take magnesium, D3, also zinc and C, and a couple of other things. I talked to you about, it's about the product as far as the company. It's about what they put in these products as far as the fillers and everything else. And you have to be very careful and do a lot of research. I would say work with a functional medicine doctor, work with a regular doctor, which probably they won't tell you the best information, but I'll say that just to throw it out there. Or work with the nutritionalists, which is what I do, because some of them, those people really do know their products. I know mine does, and I give her props for that. So can you talk about these supplements and what people should take? Because, they say, oh, you eat the food and you get the supplements through the food. That's not correct, because as you stated, with all the chemicals, the poor soil, we're not getting all the nutrients out of the food that's told to us. So we need to take these, especially, like you say, you live in the Northeast, in the winter, you got to take the D3 and the K2. If you don't, then you're going to probably be in a bad spot. Where if you're in Florida, it really probably doesn't matter if you take D or not, as long as you're outside getting your sunlight. But go ahead, talk about those supplements in general.
Well, most of us suffer from micronutrient deficiency. And yes, a lot of doctors will tell you, oh, just get all your vitamins and minerals from food. And maybe one day, long, long ago, that was possible, but it is not possible today. It just isn't. As you briefly mentioned, our soil is depleted of nutrients. There are some people who are predicting there's not that many years left where we can actually use the soil to produce crops that have any nutrients at all. And micronutrient deficiency is a component of every disease. So I'm a believer in supplements, but having said that, one has to be very, very careful. It is a $150 billion industry projected to grow to something like $320 billion by the year 2030. So, and because of that, there's a very low barrier to entry. So everyone and their brother is entering the supplement industry and selling supplements. So you need to beware. I don't sell supplements, so I have no conflict of interest. And I'm a believer that they're a definite factor in people's health. But having said that, one needs to use due diligence. They have to be very careful. You have to source the brands properly, because there has been tests that have revealed that often the dose of mineral or vitamin or whatever it is you're taking does not, on the label, on the bottle, does not match what's in the tablet. They've done tests on those. And then, as you mentioned, they fill these capsules up with things called excipients and binders and fillers to bulk them up. We don't need to be taking those. And then the other thing, you mentioned some of the things you take. One needs to be very careful about the synergistic effect of supplements. I advise everyone, do not take one supplement before you do testing first. You want to get where your baseline is and figure out where you're deficient, and only treat or supplement where you're deficient. That's why I'm not a believer in multivitamins. Everyone says take a multivitamin, but here's the issue with multivitamins. The dose of most of the minerals and vitamins is so small that it's probably not going to help you. You may already have a sufficient amount, so you don't need to add to that. And if you're truly deficient, you need more than what's on the bottle. And you're better off identifying where you're deficient and only treating that. And that's why I tell people, test first. We cannot fix what we can't measure. You need to know what your status is, where you're deficient, and then you have to go to someone who knows what they're talking about. Because you mentioned vitamin D, but I think I told you offline, you don't want to be taking vitamin D without K2, because vitamin D alone can end up in your tissues, and you don't want that. K2 is what will shepherd the vitamin D into your bones and your teeth where you need it. And that's true of a lot of these vitamins. They need to be paired with things. Zinc. During COVID, everyone was told to take zinc because it's antiviral. But I never saw one thing that was written or heard one person saying, but be careful, because zinc and copper are synergistic and they must be in balance. And if you take too much zinc and your zinc levels raise up high, your copper can fall out of balance, and that's going to set you up for other problems. So there's a lot of nuances involved in taking supplements. I think you should take them when needed, but be very careful and make sure you're doing it under the guise of a very knowledgeable healthcare practitioner.
Okay, very good. I have some questions that I'm thinking about for myself offline, but we won't. We'll spare it for the viewers. We'll just say that. Last question. With the COVID-19 and then stuff that's not even being spoken about anymore, but I'll bring it up because it was spoken about as the next COVID-19 a couple months back. Well, more than that. Monkeypox was spoken about, and we was going to have to get a vaccine for that. And then obviously COVID-19, they want you to get 600 vaccines in 1 year. Again, I have to say this, otherwise they'll shut us down on the air and on YouTube. If you want to get your vaccine, God bless you. Take as many as you want. That's your cup of tea. That's fine. Me, I'm not interested. But anyways, we'll move forward on that. So, a lot of people are really trying to stay healthy now. They're worried about their health. Some people, like I said, they'll take 100 vaccines. They don't care. And they haven't even, they're still eating McDonald's. They're still not working out. That's their cup of tea. God bless them. For people like me and people that are involved in fitness and people that care about their health, we're just trying to make sure that we can be the healthiest person we can be throughout our lives, so we can live a long, healthy life, and we don't have to worry about all this vaccine drama. So I'll leave that at that. So what I'm asking you is, for people like me that care about our health, what should we do? We talked about supplements. We talked about eating correctly. We talked about toxins in the house. We talked about a lot of things, but what else do you think we should do to make sure that we can stay healthy throughout this time, but even throughout the rest of our lives?
Well, there are the pillars that we've all heard a lot about, but they can't be overlooked. And the first one is sleep. You must optimize your sleep. If you're not getting good restorative sleep, it's going to be hard to get these other things lined up. It really is. And there are ways that you can improve your sleep, ways that do not involve taking any kind of sleep medications. You
Ugh.
make sure that you go to sleep every night at a consistent time. You wake up at a consistent time. You go to sleep in a dark room, a cold room. And when you wake up in the morning, within the first 30 to 60 minutes, you expose yourself to daylight. You get outside. And even if you live in a northern latitude, the photons from the sun are sufficient to help reset your circadian rhythms so that you will have good, consistent sleep. That's one thing to really focus on. The other thing, there's been a ton written about it, only in the last 10, 12 years, your gut. You have to
Yes.
optimize your gut. Because if you have any level of gut dysbiosis, and by the way, most of us do have some level, and that's defined as just simply an imbalance of good versus bad bacteria. If that's way off the mark, you're going to have a hard time getting anything lined up. Your gut is connected to your brain through your vagus nerve, and it's going to really impair everything. So focus on your gut. Get it as healthy as you can. And that means don't eat those ultra processed foods. That's one big thing because, leaky gut and SIBO and all of these different gut diseases, they're the beginning and they're going to lead to the degrading of all your other biological systems. So I would really focus on that and movement. We're such a sedentary society. Move every day. For those of you, I like to go to the gym, but for those of you who don't, you don't have to go to the gym, but just walk around the block. Take your dog for a walk, or if you don't have a dog, ask to take someone else's dog for a walk, but just move. If you have to sit at your computer all day, every 45 minutes, set a timer on your phone and get up every 45 minutes, walk around for 10 or 15 minutes, up and down stairs, or just move. Just do something because this being sedentary is very, very harmful. And those are just the basics. We've heard about that. And then I go into all these slightly more esoteric things like light optimization, cold thermogenesis, breathing,
Mhm.
hydration, all of those things, oral microbiome. Good health starts in your mouth. It's clearly defined that oral health is connected with systemic wellness. If you're putting bad products, don't use mouthwash that has alcohol because what's that's doing, that's killing the good and the bad bacteria. All the bacteria on your tongue, we are made of
Wow.
bacteria and we cannot fear bacteria. You need that good bacteria on your tongue, and the alcohol in the mouthwash is washing it all away. So, and be careful about your toothpaste. But I go into all of this in more detail. But there's tons of things you can do, many of them free or low cost.
Optimize your health, emilygoldmears.com. Emily, as we end, how can people find more about you besides the website? Do you have Twitter or Facebook or Instagram or any of that other stuff? And obviously, we do want them to get Optimize Your Health at any bookstore, Amazon, Barnes and Nobles, all your local bookstores. Check it out. But, leave the viewers with where else they can find you besides the website.
They can find me on Instagram and Facebook, Emily Gold Mears, and LinkedIn. Emily Gold Mears is the same title for everything to make it easy. And that's it. I'm not on Twitter, though.
Okay, no worries. Again, emilygoldmears.com. Again, Optimize Your Health. Definitely get the book. And Emily, I hope to have you on again. I mean, you are the best. You say so much information, and we could be on here for 2 hours. I know the audience probably won't captivate their attention for that long because people's attention spans are like 10 seconds now, unfortunately, in this country. But that's the way the cookie crumbles, and we'll end it there. But again, Emily Gold Mears, definitely check her out. That's emilygoldmears.com. And again, Optimize Your Health. Emily, thanks so much for your time today. I really appreciate you.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. I enjoyed talking to you, and I really hope you feel better.
Thank you.